What is up, guys? My name is Sitka Regan, and we are back on F1 24 Driver Career. This is Season 2, Episode number 15 today for the Qatar Grand Prix. Coming up. So we are coming off my home race around Las Vegas. Go check out that episode first if you haven't seen it yet before you see this one. I was able to outduel Verstappen to the win, giving me a 20-point lead in the Drivers' Championship heading into this race weekend. But it is a sprint weekend, so there's going to be a lot of points available, and I'm going to rush this minor front downforce upgrade on. It won't go on until Abu Dhabi, but I want to take every possible edge that I can get to win this title. Unfortunately, I am going to have to take some more grid penalties. My 6th internal combustion engine. It's only a 5-place grid penalty, so it shouldn't affect our weekend too badly, although Qatar is not the easiest place to overtake at. And as we look at the development chart, we've made it up to the 3rd best team on paper, which would have been hard to imagine back at the start of the season. As we've been playing the underdog team for most of the year, I do have a minor rear downforce upgrade, and that goes on successfully. And in the standings, I take a 20-point lead on Verstappen into the weekend. It's been a little bit hit or miss on what Red Bull is going to show up to which race. Are we going to get the Verstappen in Portugal, where he couldn't make his way forward at all? Or the Verstappen in Las Vegas, where he battled me all the way down to the final laps? Hopefully my teammate will show up this weekend like he did in Las Vegas. Let's head to sprint quali.
It's all about flow and pace today, qualifying in Qatar. A high-speed test that will set the grid for tomorrow's race. So welcome along.
So this was my one and only run in SQ1. I had a DRS fault, which pretty much precluded me from doing any more runs, as after this run, the DRS wasn't available for the rest of the session. Luckily for me, I was on the pace quickly as I crossed the line with 3 purple sectors, and that is good enough to see us through into SQ2. Verstappen came in 2nd, nearly half a second back. The car felt very strong throughout that first run, as my teammate also makes it through, although he's down in 13th. So not quite showing the pace that he had around Vegas. Hopefully he finds better pace in the car in SQ2, as the car is definitely capable of making SQ3. In my final run of SQ2, I am finding a little bit of time doing back-to-back runs at the end of the session. The car definitely feels a lot better in qualifying here than it did around Vegas. And it looks like the McLarens have suddenly found pace, as they've struggled for consistency over the second half of the season. But they're still in the battle for 4th in the Constructors, only 33 points back, as we come across the line, and that's good enough to see us through into SQ3 in 1st, just ahead of Verstappen and ahead of the 2 McLarens. My teammate is knocked out down in 11th, unfortunately. Hulkenberg found a better lap, but wasn't able to find his way through into SQ3. Tsunoda in the Ferrari is also knocked out down in 12th, along with both Alpines. Both Aston Martins, both McLarens, and both Mercedes all make it through into SQ3. My only run on the softs here in SQ3, and with the very high tire wear, with all the high-speed corners, the softs are only good for 1 lap. So this is the only shot we're gonna get. The car didn't feel nearly as settled as it did in SQ1 and 2. The rear end definitely felt a little more slidey, like I had to be slightly more careful getting on the power, which could mean that I just took a little bit too much out of the tires too early in the lap, and they're not as durable as the mediums are, or I was able to find the perfect temperature window on the mediums during all of my laps, and I wasn't able to do that on the softs. I might have been overheating them a little bit, as I was pushing very hard for pole position, as I definitely felt like I had the pace.
We've only got 2 laps of fuel left
to capture sprint pole and mitigate that 5-place grid penalty that we'll have for the sprint as I have a purple Sector 1, a personal best in Sector 2. I don't have a time delta to compare myself to at this point. As we head through the final corner, I get a bit of understeer on these tires to the line, and that's only good enough for second, so it won't be pole. And Verstappen grabs pole by less than a tenth, finding the perfect lap at the perfect time right at the end of SQ3, as Piastri will be moved onto the front row next to Verstappen with my grid penalty, as I'll be dropped down to 7th, as both Mercedes drivers struggled for pace, only managing 9th and 10th. Let's head to the sprint.
So it's all about speed in today's sprint. Not very many laps and no chance to get ahead on strategy. Who here today has the raw skill to take them to the top? Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. Max Verstappen put in a fantastic lap yesterday, and he'll start from pole position. And Oscar Piastri completes the front row. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Perez, Fernando Alonso, Norris, Leclerc, Haas, Stroll, Russell, Hamilton, Hülkenberg, Tsunoda, Ocon, Sainz, Gasly, Albon, Ricciardo, Sargent, Joe, and Valtteri Bottas begins the race from the back of the grid.
So we'll be starting the sprint on the medium tires. I'm pretty sure everybody in the field will be on the mediums, as the softs just don't have the tire life to make it all 10 laps of the sprint.
Okay, so everything looks good on the power unit cycles, so let's concentrate on bringing tyres and brakes up to temperature. Decent parking. Let's try and get a good launch as the lights go out.
And the 5 red lights. And the Qatar sprint is underway. As I get a ton of wheel spin off the start and lose a position to Stroll up the inside. I will have an opportunity to go back around the outside through the first corner as Norris and Perez battle just ahead of me. And through the second corner, Stroll tries to hang it around the outside, but we're going to squeeze him out. So I get a snap of oversteer over the curb. Russell makes his way past Stroll. And after all of that, I'm back into 7th, trying to close back up to Norris in 6th. And it's taken me a full lap to catch up to the back of Norris. Using the DRS, Norris is charging his battery. As we go around the outside of the McLaren, nearly ran into the back of the Red Bull, who braked very early into that first corner. But I do make my way up into 6th, so I am making my way forward, although the progress is slower than I would have liked. I think my wings are a little bit high, which might explain my very good qualifying pace. As on lap 4, Verstappen is challenging Alonso for the lead, and Verstappen does take over the lead of the race. As I set the fastest lap on lap 4 and go for an aggressive move up the inside of Perez, but Leclerc comes across and makes contact. I somehow keep the car straight, somehow kept that out of a full spin, and I'm able to hold on to 6th for the moment. I do have minor front wing damage, however, so that will compromise me a little bit through the left-handed turns. I run wide through turn 5, get on the curb, lose a bit of traction, and that was just pure frustration on my part at that point, having lost the position to Perez that I just passed him for, picking up damage from Leclerc, and having to spend an extra lap making that time back up as we check in on Hamilton, who's been struggling for pace here in the sprint, and this could be why, as he is slowing down and pulling off to the side. So it's going to be a DNF, and that's only going to leave one Mercedes to try to score points in their battle with Aston Martin and McLaren for 4th in the Constructors. And it's taken me to the start of lap 6 to close back into the back of Perez.
Great work. That's a new fastest lap.
As I set another fastest lap, I'm going to go up the inside of Perez, being much more cautious of Leclerc, who will cut across us again. Perez is going to keep his foot in though, and we're still side by side through the second corner. And through the little kink of turn 3, we're still side by side. And I need to finish off this move without letting Leclerc get too far away. And I do finish off the move up into 5th, setting my sights on Leclerc as I need to start moving forward, as I'm very quickly running out of laps to get some more overtakes done, as Verstappen leads from Alonso and Piastri. As it stands, I'd be losing 4 points to Verstappen, who's winning the sprint at the moment, although Alonso's looking to play spoiler and grab a win for himself as Verstappen goes defensive into the first corner.
Gap to your teammate behind, 2.3 seconds.
And Verstappen just lost the lead to Alonso, but I just lost 5th to his teammate Perez as I had just fallen out of the DRS of Leclerc and didn't have enough battery to defend down the long DRS straight, so that 5th-place grid penalty is proving to be rather costly, as none of us have been able to make much progress forward, as the difficulty in overtaking around Qatar is definitely showing itself in the sprint. I might lower the wings for the race to see if that'll help me with some overtakes, as Verstappen tries to go back up the inside of Alonso on lap 8 as they go side by side through the first corner, and Alonso does manage to hold on to the lead as Perez goes defensive on me, but I'm able to use the DRS to get back through, back up into 5th, and without some kind of intervention, 5th might be the best I can hope for today, as the tires are starting to die off. I'm doing my best to close into the back of Leclerc, but I have a big slide through turn 7, and that's not going to help me close up to the back of Leclerc. And it was at this point that I decided to go all in, burn the rest of my battery over the second half of this lap, and try to close to within the DRS of Leclerc, take the recharge lap on lap 9, and then go for it on the final lap. But if I don't make it into the DRS of Leclerc by the end of this lap, I will have no defense for Perez, and possibly even Norris behind. Fortunately, I do make it into the DRS of the Ferrari. I am going to have to go for a recharge, however, as my battery is approaching
Manage your tires.
single digits. Verstappen using the DRS to retake the advantage at the front of the field, as Piastri thinks about a look around the outside of Alonso. Alonso in real danger of losing 2 positions here, and he might be better off just letting it go and retaking second on the next lap so as not to let Verstappen get away, as Piastri and Alonso continue the battle all the way through the double right-handers of turn 4 and 5, and Alonso does eventually have to back out of it and have to settle back into 3rd, although his fighting has allowed Leclerc and thus myself into this fight in the closing laps. And as we approach the final lap, it looks like Verstappen has managed to break the DRS to Piastri and Alonso, and that's going to open up quite a melee, all the way from Piastri in 2nd, all the way to myself down in 5th. As Alonso's going for a move on Piastri for 2nd, Leclerc's going for a move on Piastri as well. Leclerc and Piastri going side by side blocked me off from making a move, which gives Perez an opening to try to go up our inside. I am able to fend off Perez and hold on to 5th, as it seemed like a bit of a half-hearted effort from Perez to overtake through the 2nd corner. He backed out of it very easily, and I've run out of places with the DRS to overtake. So if I'm going to get any more places, I'm going to have to find somewhere more unorthodox to pull off an overtake, as I'm using as much battery as I can risk using at the moment. I'm going to go up the inside of Leclerc into turn 16, as the Ferrari left the door wide open for me to try to make a move. We're going to dump the rest of the battery and steal 4th in the final corner.
And bring it home.
So in the end, P4 only losing 3 points to Verstappen, who does go on to win the sprint. I get a little bit of revenge on Leclerc, who damaged my front wing earlier in the sprint. Unfortunately, our teammate could not make it up into the points, finishing down in 10th, and both McLarens finish in the points for the first time that I can remember in a while. Let's see if Verstappen can carry this momentum forward as we head straight into qualifying for the feature race.
It's all about flow and pace today, qualifying in Qatar, a high-speed test that will set the grid for tomorrow's race. So welcome along.
Okay, we've been pushed down to P12.
This is my one and only run in Q1. Because it's a sprint weekend, we only have one new set of tires for each session in qualifying, so there's a little bit less room for error. However, the car has shown very strong pace over the weekend, especially in qualifying, as we cross the line in third, and that single lap was good enough to see us through in third, behind Lance Stroll. Where did that time come from? As Stroll finally shows the same kind of pace that Alonso's been showing all season, as Verstappen finishes up in second, and my teammate does make it through, but barely in 14th. Again, struggling to get on top of the car this weekend, which is especially frustrating after the pace that he showed in Vegas. The car is definitely capable of a top 10 as I head through the flat-out turn 15 here in Q2. This was my only run on a new set of softs. I catch some understeer through turn 16, which is a little bit shabby. Still good enough for the fastest time here in Q2 thus far. And good enough to see us into Q3 in first, just ahead of Verstappen, who's showing very strong pace so far this weekend. And unfortunately, my teammate is knocked out down in 12th, as Gasly in the Alpine manages to make it through in 10th. So a good lap from the Frenchman to make his way into Q3, as Tsunoda in the Ferrari is knocked out down in 15th. So that's a tough break for the second Ferrari driver, seemingly struggling as bad as my teammate to find pace, nowhere near his teammate Leclerc, who's up in 5th. So my final run of Q3, I think the potential for pole position is very much there, as Verstappen and I have been very close together through the first two qualifying sessions. The McLarens might have an outside chance as well, as they were both very quick on their first runs here in Q3. I assume they did their first runs on a used set of softs like I did. As I head into the hairpin of turn 6, I'm a little hesitant getting on the power, but I am purple through sector 1, picking up over 3/10ths through the first sector alone, showing just how much one run on a set of tires here can really take out of them. I was really hoping that Hülkenberg would have made Q3 with me in this race, that he would have made some changes to his car following his struggles in the sprint. The car is nearly maxed out with performance upgrades. I don't know how we can make it any better for him. If he could have scored at least half as many points as me this season, we might have had a shot at going after Red Bull for the Constructors' title as well. As I head through the final corners to the line, that's good enough for provisional pole for the moment, and good enough for pole position in the feature race by nearly 4/10ths. The lap felt good. I didn't know it was going to be that good though, as Verstappen does manage to put it P2, as Perez and Alonso round out the second row, showing that Red Bull does have pace around here, as Leclerc is down in 9th. That'll be disappointing for him and for Ferrari after they showed good pace in the sprint, and it'll be an all McLaren third row as they try to climb back into the Constructors' fight after slipping down to 6th. Let's see if I can manage to hold off Verstappen down into the first corner. Let's head to the grid.
We're under the lights once again here in Qatar. Last year we took a year off due to a small footballing tournament that was being hosted, but it's all excitement on the track now. We're back here in Lusail for a track that's 3.34 miles long. There are 16 turns around its unique three-pronged shape and just a single DRS zone out of turn 16. It's fast and it's flowing, and there's a good overtaking opportunity with DRS down the long straight and into turn 1. It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. In pole position, it's Haas. Sergio Perez lines up alongside. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Fernando Alonso, Norris, Oscar Piastri, Stroll, Hamilton, Leclerc, Gasly, Russell, Hülkenberg, Verstappen, Ocon, Albon, Tsunoda, Zhou, Sargent, Sainz, Bottas, and Daniel Ricciardo fills the last spot on the grid. Which of these talented drivers will come out on top today?
And the big news is Verstappen with that 10-place grid drop, seemingly Red Bull forced to take new engine components following the sprint race. Can he manage any kind of recovery?
Okay, how was that pull away? You'll have a bit more grip than that on the start, but we need to warm the tyres properly now. Make sure you get some heat into the brakes as well.
After so much difficulty with overtaking in the sprint race, Red Bull has left Verstappen with a huge task this race.
Make sure we get the edge on the surrounding drivers as the lights go out.
And the 5 red lights. And the Qatar Grand Prix is underway. And that was a very fast hold as I get quite a bit of wheel spin. Perez gets a much better launch, already through on the inside. As Norris challenges me up the inside as well, I've lost 2 positions off the start. As Stroll in the Aston Martin is also having a look around the outside through turn 2. I do manage to fend off the Aston Martin, but definitely not an ideal start. As Verstappen is still in 12th off the start, battling with Ocon over 13th, as my teammate is up 2 positions, up into 9th. So a good start from Hülkenberg, and not a good start from Verstappen, takes some of the pressure off my bad start away. And as we head towards the end of lap 2, I have managed to stay well within the DRS of Norris in 2nd, who's putting the pressure on Perez in the lead, and Verstappen's grid penalty has really allowed me to play this more patiently than I would have if he was at the front of the field. As Norris takes the lead of the race,
Stroll's just set the fastest lap of the race so far.
I'm gonna make my way around the outside of the Red Bull through the first corner. Perez keeps his nose in, but I'm gonna finish off the move through the second turn. And 1 lap later, I'm gonna use the DRS to attack Norris down the DRS straight. So despite my bad start, I am still making progress forward. Unlike Verstappen, who is still down in 12th. As I sweep around the outside of Norris back into the lead of the race. But as I head through turn 2, I have a big slide on the rear end. And that's going to allow Norris to come back through to recapture the lead. So a very messy race from me so far. As I had a terrible start, managed to come back through, retake the lead, and then hand it right back to Norris 1 corner later. Maybe a little bit of potential championship jitters, or a loss of focus because of Verstappen's surprise penalty. I'm not too sure, but I can't afford to keep making silly mistakes like this in a race that Red Bull seemingly are trying to hand me on a silver platter. As Norris again goes defensive into the first corner. This time I sweep around the outside through the first corner and am able to hold on to the lead. I am also doing a bit of tire management at this point, as the tire deg around Qatar is very high, and we cannot afford to make an extra pit stop this race. So I need to make these mediums last as long as possible, and it also seemed very unlikely at this point that I was going to be able to break the DRS to the resurgent McLaren, as he's been showing excellent race pace thus far. As he goes up the inside through the first corner, I tried not to fight that too hard, as I did not want to invite Perez back into the fight. As Hülkenberg continues his recovery, using the DRS to get past Hamilton and up into 8th. So Hülkenberg is up 3 positions, well into the points, recovering from his underwhelming qualifying. As I go back up the inside of Norris into the first corner, Norris tries to hang it around the outside through turn 1, goes back up the inside through turn 2, giving me quite a fight for the lead, but thinks better of losing too much time to Perez, and drops back into 2nd, as the second Red Bull driver is just patiently waiting behind Norris and myself to battle too hard for the lead and open up an opportunity to to attack one or both of us. As we check in on Verstappen on lap 11, and he is still struggling down in 12th. Although Gasly has a big lockup into turn 6, and that's going to give Verstappen a free position up into 11th. So Gasly, who did make Q3 and started the race in 10th, is clearly struggling with tire wear and has been dropped down to 12th after that mistake into turn 6. And this race is very reminiscent of Portugal for Verstappen, who found himself down in the traffic, unable to move forward, seemingly struggling for any kind of race pace, which is weird because he had very good pace in the sprint. As Piastri is also struggling with the tire wear, has a big lockup into turn 6, and that's going to allow Alonso and Leclerc through, as all of us have entered a bit of a tire saving phase of the race, just trying to get these mediums to last as long as we can. Although if I was Verstappen or the Red Bull pit crew,
Caution, caution.
I might try something aggressive and try to box now onto the hards, get into free air and see if I could make up some of these positions with an undercut.
Okay, we're boxing this lap. Give us the best in lap you can.
As he is seemingly struggling to make any kind of moves forward, as I indicated to my crew that I was thinking about taking a more aggressive strategy, as I was really starting to struggle on these mediums as well, as I go back up the inside of Perez.
We can't let them hold us up for too long, so let's try and get past as soon as possible and crack on. Push, push.
As Mark gives us the immediate hurry up to get back past Norris, seemingly unaware of the fact that we've been trading the lead back and forth periodically over the last few laps with the DRS, as Stroll is using the DRS to close up and attack Perez, showing that his qualifying pace was no fluke as they battle side by side through the first corner, with Stroll finishing off the move on the exit of turn 1. And as I come through turn 16, I am gonna peel into the pits, following Norris in.
Okay, don't worry about that target for now. Let's just focus on this pit stop.
As we have yet another slow pit stop. You've got to be kidding me.
We had an issue attaching the left front wheel. I know it's not ideal, but let's try and put that behind us and get back into this race. That was our last stop. No more scheduled pit stops. Let's go.
As we have a nearly 6-second pit stop. And the only thing that makes that worse is Hülkenberg came in behind us and was forced to double stack, as the strategy team decided not to adjust Hülkenberg's strategy on the fly and keep him out an additional lap. So that is going to cost Hülkenberg time and undo a lot of the progress he made over his first stint on the mediums. As I use some battery to challenge Norris up the DRS straight, I need to try to progress back forward after mine and the team's very messy weekend continues, as I make my way around the outside of Norris up into 5th.
Okay, mate, let's try and pick our moments when we use the RS. Let's try to be consistent with it going forward, please.
As Mark is worried about me saving the battery, when I really need to be using it to try to make up some of that time that I lost with that very slow pit stop, as I have to take a little bit of avoiding action to avoid the back of Leclerc. I get on the curb and have a huge tank slapper, nearly spin the car, as Norris makes his way back through, and the very messy weekend continues. So I can blame the team for the very slow pit stop, but I've made plenty of mistakes over this race weekend as well. As Verstappen makes a move up the inside of Stroll, into 7th, and is now only behind me by 1 place. So despite Verstappen struggling throughout the entire feature race, I imagine he'd be very pleased to only find himself 1 place behind me, with 9 laps left to go. In terms of damage limitation, especially considering the points he gained on me in the sprint race, as I tuck into the slipstream of the McLaren in an attempt to again get past Norris. Norris looks like he wants to go for a move on Leclerc. He backs out of the move, but he used Leclerc as a bit of a mobile chicane through the first corner, I was able to get around Norris, but I made a little bit of contact with Leclerc,
Great maneuver. You made it look so easy.
compromising me through the second corner, which gave Norris a bit of a look, but I was able to finish off the move up into fifth as Piastri and Perez battle in front of me, which is allowing me to keep pace with Leclerc, but Leclerc compromises me again through turn 6, which is going to give Norris a look into turn 7. The McLaren decides to back out of it as it's not an optimal place to pass, so I'm holding on to 5th for the moment. As on lap 21, Perez uses the DRS on Piastri to easily retake 2nd, as I pull out the slipstream on Leclerc to go around the outside through turn 1. The Ferrari does a good job keeping his foot in, but he's going to be forced to the outside through turn 2, and that's going to give me 4th, as Leclerc decides to smartly back out of it and not lose time fighting there, as he'll get another opportunity, as I have a big snap of oversteer in the long turn 7 as Leclerc tries to go back up the inside, but again Leclerc decides to be smart and just back out of it, staying close until the DRS zone, as that snap of oversteer has dropped me outside of a second to the battle between Perez and Piastri. There have just been too many mistakes this race, as perhaps the pressure of the title is starting to reveal some cracks in both myself and the team, as on lap 25 I had managed to stay in 4th. Norris, who had managed to get by Leclerc, tries to go up the inside into the first corner as Perez and Piastri go side by side right in front of us. I do manage to hold on to 4th, keeping Norris behind for the moment, as the battle between the McLaren and Red Bull is allowing me to close back in, nearly back to within the DRS, but I don't have a lot of battery to use, as I had used it all to defend from Norris down the straight before. As Perez manages to get back in front of Piastri for 2nd, and despite Verstappen getting back up into 7th following the pit stops, he hasn't been able to make much progress forward beyond that, as Perez is going to find himself vulnerable down this straight with no DRS. Piastri's going to make his way past fairly easily. With Perez deciding not to defend, he does give Piastri a bit of a squeeze. That's going to give me an opportunity to try to go around the outside of the Red Bull, as I try to climb back onto the podium, going up the inside of Perez through turn 2. The Red Bull does manage to squeeze me back out. He actually did a very good job holding on to 3rd. He actually pushed me out wide enough that Norris had a little bit of a look up the inside as we begin the penultimate lap of the race.
Okay, so we're leading our teammate by 7.2 seconds.
Perez goes for a move around the outside of Piastri.
The car behind is dropping back by about 0.3 a lap. Well done.
I have a little bit of a look, but I didn't get close enough for any kind of a move on the McLaren. And just like in the sprint, the laps are very quickly running out for me to make any more progress forward, and I just feel like I should be better off than where I am, considering how good the pace and the car have felt the entire weekend. It's a bit frustrating to find myself only in 4th, as Alonso makes his way around to start the final lap. The Aston Martin driver has really run away with this in the second stint, especially with Perez and Piastri battling as hard as they have. It's given Alonso the perfect opportunity to just drive his race, save the tires, and put in consistent lap times and just run away with this win.
Oh, mate, you made that look easy. Nice work. That's why I love working with you. Smashed it. Final lap, push, push.
As I waft to the inside and have a little bit of a look on Piastri, but I'm not close enough to make a move, as that is the last, best, and easiest place to make any kind of an overtake on this track. I will close into the back of Piastri, and I can keep it close, but there's just nowhere to make any kind of an overtake to get onto the podium. And considering the number of mistakes I've made already this weekend, I didn't think it was worth taking a giant risk just to climb into 3rd from 4th, especially with Verstappen behind, who's still down in 7th, as he was able to get past Stroll but was never quite able to catch up to the back of Leclerc to make any kind of a move, as Alonso comes through the final corner to win the Qatar Grand Prix Perez is going to come across in second, and Piastri is going to round out the podium in third.
And that's the end of the race. We'll see you in Parc Fermé.
What a day it's been for Fernando Alonso. It's victory, and what a victory.
So Alonso captures his first win of the season and the first win for Aston Martin this year. So a huge haul of points for Aston Martin in their fight with Mercedes and McLaren for fourth in the Constructors. We'll have to see where all the points settle out, as Stroll also got some decent points.
The Aston Martin team will be very happy with today's performance. And of course, the final results. Another display of excellent driving and excellent teamwork. And a well-deserved first place finish.
Perez showed the Red Bull did have good pace today, as Verstappen again showed that the Red Bull seems to struggle down in traffic, as he had a race very similar to the race that he had in Portugal, where he just could not find a way to move forward. But too many mistakes from myself and the team have allowed Red Bull and Verstappen to extend this title fight to Abu Dhabi. And after the sprint results are tallied in as well, I only gained 4 points on Verstappen throughout the entire race weekend, outscoring him 18-14, as Hülkenberg was unable to climb back into the points after being forced to double stack behind me in the pits and having to wait the extra time for my slow pit stop. So I feel like the team and myself kind of ruined Hülkenberg's race this weekend. I will take a 24-point lead into the title race into Abu Dhabi, so I have one hand on the title already. However, I feel like by not closing out Verstappen this weekend, we've given them just a glimmer of hope where anything can happen in the next race, especially around Abu Dhabi, where craziness and title fights have already happened. And we will go into Abu Dhabi only 9 points back of Ferrari for second in the Constructors, so that is still possible. And Aston Martin's big results today have given them a huge lead on fourth in the Constructors heading into the final race. And McLaren's big comeback result this weekend has given them a 9-point lead over Mercedes for fifth, dropping Mercedes all the way down to sixth in the Constructors after their poor showing this weekend, as I close out the weekend just shy of an 88 driver rating, as the gap between me and Hülkenberg is still 12 percentage points in the recognition. Hülkenberg did get screwed over by myself and the team this weekend, so I'm glad he didn't take too big of a hit for that. And I will be taking a grid penalty next week
As if you have a new rival.
in Abu Dhabi, as I'm going to be forced to take an extra energy store just to be safe. It's only a 5-place grid penalty, and considering the 24-point lead I have in the drivers, I think it's worth the risk, as one of the only things that could derail my title hopes would be a DNF due to mechanical failure. So I think it's worth taking a brand new engine component, as I definitely don't have to win the race. I just have to finish in the points. Anyway, guys, that's all I got for this week. I'll see you next week in the title decider in Abu Dhabi. Goodbye.